Welcome everybody to episode 101 of I Got Gameplay. I am your host, Michael Burhan, the man who never sleeps. I am the ghost who walks. Get that reference. And today we have a very, very special guest. We have the one and only John Gamester, Gamester81. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well, guys. How you doing? Thanks so much for having me. Congratulations on hitting the century mark on the episode. That's pretty huge. Good milestone.
It's a good thing. It's great from showing where this podcast kind of started from literally like nothing. I remember when we first toyed with the idea, we had a website that we were working with, and they just had this platform saying, hey, we got this name, I Got Gameplay, it's been registered, nothing's happening for it, and I got the idea to turn it into a podcast. But like since I think like 30 episodes in, we basically managed to kind of change the team that have been working on here, but one person who's kind of remained a constant since he guested on the show and is now like a main host is the one and only, the man with the sexiest voice on the internet, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. He is Xander Skullion.
Hello, everyone. How's it going tonight? I don't know.
I can see you.
Hey.
Nice.
But yeah. It's great to be on, definitely.
And also, we have the very, very lovely Jamie Stiles. Just don't play Alien Isolation in front of her, because that will scare the crap out of her. Jamie, how are you doing today?
Hey, I can handle being scared. Just because I have counted 10 times when my soul has left my body watching someone play Alien Isolation does not mean that I can't take some scares, alright? I'm a tough cookie. Don't mess with me.
You were just sneezing a lot. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
what it was. Just, oh god. Yeah, sorry, sneeze. Damn allergy.
Yeah, she's not scared, people. She just needs cough medicine.
She needs some Claritin in her life.
Now,
Oh, we all?
Oh, yeah.
Now, going on from that, usually we'll do our news segment, guys, but we're going to go straight into it because it's a great opportunity for us to ask a few questions here to John and find out exactly about yourself. Now Gamester, I saw like the other day, because we're friends on Facebook here, that you posted like a little bit, kind of a little breakdown about yourself, talking about your gaming collections and also like the other stuff. And one thing that kind of stood out for me was that when you started your YouTube channel, you said you normally wouldn't have gone in front of a camera because you're very, very shy. So how did the channel kind of...
I was. Yeah, so I was very shy, and I hated the sound of my voice, actually, by growing up. Up until, when I started my channel back in '08. But the way that my channel kind of came to be was when I got married, my parents gave me a really crappy camera. And I wanted to find information about some systems and items that I had in my collection that, quite frankly, I went online to YouTube hoping that there was information, and there wasn't. So I decided to kind of just talk about games and systems. I did some research on my own and then posted those to YouTube, and, people started to get interested in my videos, and I made a lot of friends. I'm like, hey, this is kind of a cool thing, and I think over time I just got more used to it, being in front of camera. And if you watch some of my earlier videos, you can see there's like no editing at all, which I think proves that you don't necessarily need good equipment and good editing skills to have a good show. As long as you're just sincere and you're honest about what you're doing and you're having fun doing it, I think that's the most important thing. But, yeah, so I mean, it's been fun, roller coaster, man. It's been unbelievable. And looking back on it, I would have never thought like I'd be where I am today, like when I first started, which is pretty crazy. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos that kind of stood out for me. I remember when you talked about the PlayStation dev kit that you have, that you out of your many possessions. That was one that kind of stood out.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, the Net Your Aussie. That's a pretty interesting video for sure, and very interesting system for sure. Unfortunately, I'm not technical enough to know how to program for it. It's all in Japanese, of course, so I can't necessarily do all the programming. But it's a very cool system. It's black. It's got like a matte finish. For those who are listening, don't know what it is. It's basically like a PS1. It's a black PS1. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, it's basically because I remember looking into it because I at one point I was going through like many different phases when I was a bit younger, and one of them was looking at that system to see how I could program PlayStation 1 games. But when I saw it, because I remember that was the first time I kind of saw your channel as well, and it was very detailed. You were very specific in regards to what you had and breaking down in terms of these systems, and it was kind of something that we never in terms of YouTube, you never got to see that, because I think it was going around the same time, around about 2008, that everybody was doing the whole angry video game nerd thing.
Right, of course, yeah.
And it was like, let's just find a game and shit on it. And mostly with that, I'm very technically minded myself. I love consoles. I love looking into systems. And the one thing as well that kind of spawned from that was I found that your favorite console was the ColecoVision, which is actually one of the first systems that I ever had growing up as a child.
Oh, right on, man. That's cool.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny.
Yeah, it's just funny because, I talk to most people who have no idea what the ColecoVision is. And especially in Europe, it's even more obscure.
I know.
So, that's cool.
The funny thing is we went through about 3 of those different systems because my dad kept blowing up the power supply on the thing because we played it really
okay.
We used to have family time in the room, where we would just sit down in the living room. We had this old, freaking 52-inch pan scan television with the ColecoVision linked up to it. And I was playing Nintendo games, Donkey Kong, playing Mr. Do, for 2, and loads of other fun little games that came with this system. And it was kind of the start of my journey into gaming, in a sense. And what I want to ask you about that is, how did you kind of fall in love with the ColecoVision? How did that become the console of choice for you?
I think a lot of it stems from just nostalgia. I mean, it was my first system I ever remember playing. I had a neighbor who had an Atari 2600 and an Atari 5200, and I played those quite a bit. But that was ColecoVision was the first system I actually remember playing significantly with my brothers growing up. And I'm a big arcade guy. I love arcades. I love Donkey Kong. You just mentioned that. I love, Pac-Man. Hasn't been ported to the Coleco, unfortunately. But there are a lot of great arcade ports to the ColecoVision. And if you're an arcade fan like I am, you're missing out because it's such a great, underrated system. I mean, the only thing that's really the Achilles heel is the controller sucks. But if you can get beyond the controller, which, it works fine, but if you can get beyond that, it's kind of between the Atari 2600 and right before the NES, right? And what's so unique about it is you had a lot of different publishers publishing games. You had Sega coming out with games like Zaxxon. You had Nintendo coming out with games like Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. So it's one of the few systems that you see Nintendo and Sega kind of on the same platform up until recently, with the Wii and the DS and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. So, but it's a great system.
Yeah,
for sure.
Do you have the little kind of expansion slots that you used to? Do you know those little coverings that you'd put?
Oh yeah. You had the Module 2 expansion module, which would basically allow you to play Atari 2600 games, which is crazy to think about. I mean, it's I don't know how you even compare it today. It'd be you'd be able to play Wii U games on your PS4. It's a strange thing. You never think of that happening. You'd think there'd be a big lawsuit, and there was, but Coleco won because they claimed it was different parts, which it was technically. So, it just kind of opened up an interesting, thing there back in the day. But yeah, and then they also had a steering wheel for a game called Turbo, which is by Sega, and it's one of the first racing games that actually had a racing pedal and a steering wheel, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about that because, I had all the expansions, for the system as well, with my dad basically was collecting for it because he had a huge collection in terms of the system itself. But the one thing that I found, when playing with it was, it kind of was that door for me to Nintendo. That was kind of my doorway to taking that leap because Donkey Kong for me was my favorite game. I played this thing religiously, and it got to the point where I eventually got an NES. That was actually one of I believe that was the second or third game that I got for it because Nintendo ended up releasing it with Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. So you have the two game pack basically. As me as a kid watching the graphics of the ColecoVision and playing all these amazing games with my dad, it was kind of like one of those nice little bonding sessions as well, from basically in terms of having that gaming memory. Now, in terms of your collection, you've got a very big and in-depth collection of consoles. I don't know how your wife feels about it. She must probably be dreading the fact you have all these consoles scattered around everywhere.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's... Go ahead, sorry.
How did you kind of like get started in that? You know, because I know with most collectors, especially what Robman for Happy Console Games say to us is, when you start collecting, you kind of never stop. You know, you've always bought your consoles and stuff, but with you kind of kept adding and adding and adding and adding to your collection to the point that you've probably got one of the biggest collections out there.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. It's been a lot of fun. And just one more point about the Coleco, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but what a lot of people don't realize is the MSX computer, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, is actually very similar hardware to the Coleco. In fact, you can port games very easy to back and forth. So it just shows you how much power that system actually had, which is cool. But back to your initial question about my collection. Yeah, I've been collecting for years, man. I mean, ever since I was young, like when I was in high school, I had maybe like 20 different consoles, you know, dating back. And I'm one of those things when guys, you know, when I buy a console, I don't usually trade it in or sell it. I keep it and play it, you know. So I would just amass this collection I had the Atari Lynx when it first came out, the original Game Boy, most of the main stuff, right? But then I started doing some researching. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool. Let's see there's this TurboGrafx 16. What's the CD attachment? And I started doing some researching on that and found out there's some, like, not only that, but there's some variations, like the Turbo Duo and all these other cool things. And I'm like, that's cool. So, I mean, the key about collecting is you have to know, you have to do your homework, man. You know, don't buy the first time you see it. Make sure you have a budget in place, because it can get very expensive. And I caution people from doing buy it nows on eBay, because you don't know, that doesn't really give you the good value of a price. It's just about, but it's been fun, man. My collection right now is up to over 200 consoles. A lot of variations of that, of course, but some unique ones for sure.
Mm. So, in terms of like budgets as well, and in terms of the way that the industry has gone, what do you think is like running up the prices for these systems? Because, some like retailers are now like naming their own prices in a sense and charging like for a standard Nintendo cart, you're at the same price that you probably get a brand new like PlayStation 4 game.
A lot of it's just supply and demand, and I think that's our fault I think a lot of it's YouTube and bringing people's interest. I'm serious, like, bring people's interest to it, and James will do a review on a really, interesting game, like, Plumbers Don't Wear Ties for the 3DO, for example. It's a really shitty game, pardon my French, but it's a terrible game. And it's just awful. But yet, like, once he did that video, people started buying that game and it like skyrocketed in value. And so I think once people, if there's a big demand for it, retailers know this, they're smart, they're going to jack up the prices.
So, like, in terms of your collection, what's the rarest system that you own?
The rarest system I own is probably a Valley Home Library computer. It's an obscure console. I'd be surprised if you guys have heard of it. It came out, are you guys familiar with the Bally Astrocade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No? Okay, kind of, okay. Right on. So it's basically a mail-in version of that, like a prototype that was shipped to, like, very select few people in the city of New York back when it came out. In fact, there's, like, I don't even know how I got one because supposedly some people say it was shipped, some people say it wasn't. So I have no idea how many of these actually exist. So it's like a variation of that, which is pretty cool.
Wow. And I know that you own like a collection of kind of emulated consoles as well, because I'm looking at your channel, you have a couple of different systems that come from like China and Japan that you can actually emulate your like Neo Geo and stuff like that on. So how did you kind of fall into doing that?
Well, yeah, definitely, emulation can be kind of a touchy subject for some gamers. I think there is a place for it for sure. I have a system called the Pandora, which basically allows you to emulate pretty much any system you want. But I like it for the convenience factor. Does it stop prohibiting me from ever wanting to go out and buy a physical copy? Absolutely not. It's just more, if it's a game, like a lot of times you have fans like translations that are maybe they came out in Japan, but you can't play them because they're in Japanese. So people have fans translations that you can play on emulation, which you wouldn't be able to normally. Or that's a nice feature to have. Or some people do hacks, and those are nice to play too sometimes. So I definitely think there's a place for it for sure.
So I know as well that you own several different consoles that are special edition as well. Because I was looking at that green Xbox.
The Mountain Dew one.
The Mountain Dew, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that video specifically because you had like kind of the Mountain Dew thing where you took the Xbox out of the fridge and you were pouring it into the
So stupid. Looking back on that, it was like, why did I do that? But no, it's funny. It's funny.
How do you like with those systems? You must have put in a lot of research to find them.
Yeah, definitely. That's just a good example of, and then that particular one, it wasn't like the first one I spotted. You just have to wait things will pop up. You just have to be patient about it and, find out how much they're worth, ask around, go on forums, Nintendo Age or whatever, where it might be, and find out how much these are going for. And then once you have kind of an idea of what it goes for, then set that money aside and just wait your turn because they will pop up eventually.
No, very true. Xander, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna, cause you have your own video game on the ColecoVision.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that? Thinking this game the system that you're so nostalgic with, and you have your own game. Like maybe you can tell the listeners about how you got a part of the homebrew scene and got to have this game put out.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because I don't think we ever dreamed of ever having our own game named after us, So it's funny. I had a series called Retro with Joe. I did on my channel. I still do every once in a while. And he's actually a good neighbor of mine, and he owns a website called Atari2600.com, and he just has a huge collection. And we have the series where we just talk about retro things, and one of the topics was homebrew games. And after we shot that episode, I was kind of talking to him like, it'd be really cool to do a new homebrew game from scratch with you, Joe, like partner up with him. He's like, yeah, he's like, I've been thinking about doing that. I don't know what we would call it. And I was kind of just joking around, like, Joe, why don't we just call it Cage 31 video game, just kind of whatever, And he's like, I love that idea. I'm like, really? Like, I don't think it's going to sell. He's like, no, let's try it. So sure enough, we went on to AtariAge.com. There's some forums on there, and we kind of asked around. We found a really good programmer for the game. We came up with the story, and then through that, I got connected to a company called ColecoVision, which now I'm actually a part of, which is cool, and they helped me produce it, which is awesome. I think it turned out really well. It's something I'm really proud of, and we're actually working on some new games, still working on a lot of Coleco games, but we've got 3 Super Nintendo games in the work, a Nintendo game in the work for the NES, so it's been a lot of work, but it's interesting to see a game from the very beginning, preliminary stages. You don't realize all the work behind the scenes that goes into it. It's pretty incredible. It's like, it makes me appreciate when I see a game, like, how much work actually went into it. Anything from the sprites to music, it's all got to work out, perfectly. So it's interesting.
I'm still waiting on that game to go for second printing so I can actually get a copy myself.
Oh, yeah, for my game? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I do. Yeah, I'll let you know. I just did a printing, just recently, actually, and sold some at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, but sold out.
Oh, awesome.
So I might do another printing. It's a lot of money up front to produce these carts and box the manuals and stuff, and I just want to make sure there's a demand for it first.
Yeah, definitely.
But
it's one of those things because the ColecoVision, I still own mine. It's one of those consoles that I haven't purchased a new game for in a while, and I'm just like, you know what? That was actually the first game, because I did try to order the first print that you guys did. But like kind of due to delivery and hiccups and stuff, I didn't manage to get a copy. But it was one of those things where I wanted to see, what it would be like if it still stood the test of time in terms of like gameplay and originality with stuff. And it's kind of funny though, because the modding community out there has been managing to make some amazing titles. I know one I was looking at quite recently was there's a NES version of Final Fantasy VII that's been put, and people have been adjusting it, working with the game to try and to make it seem everything as the PS1 counterpart in a sense. There's a new Leisure Suit Larry coming out too for the NES, which is interesting. So it is cool to see all these things come out for sure. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things as well, because we had Al Lowe on here talking about the previous iterations of Larry that he produced, including the Kickstarter. And it was so surreal trying to learning about this, because Larry himself is very iconic in terms of gaming characters in a sense, because he's just this. It's kind of a parody in itself. This 40-something guy looking for love in all the wrong places, but it's still very absolutely. It kind of holds the test of time in a sense. So let's talk about kind of your games. Which game for you is your favorite game? What's the one that you can sit there and say, I can play this game religiously without stop? Man, there's so many. It's hard. I mean, Final Fantasy VII is definitely up there, dude, for the list, for sure.
I love Donkey Kong Country. It's got to be up there too. The music, the sound, graphics. I mean, I remember when that game came out, and you guys remember the Super Nintendo kiosk at the stores? You'd see it at like the Nintendo store, and I don't know, they used a really cool TV that made the graphics look even better than they actually were. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it was super cool. I love just all three Donkey Kong Countries. I love, Super Mario Kart's great. I mean, Super Nintendo's probably one of my favorite consoles too. It's got to be up there. I love the original Donkey Kong Arcade. That's just so classic, and Star Wars Arcade as well by Atari is great. More modern games. I'm really enjoying the Walking Dead series. Have you guys played that?
The Telltale series.
Telltale. Yeah, the Activision one.
I haven't played season 2 yet, but season 1, oh my god.
Okay,
that game
starts out a bit slow, but it's still good.
Yeah,
which was season 2?
Yeah, season 2 starts out a bit slow, but it's still super good.
Right, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I played season 1 like towards the end of the last leg of it, like that. I think like the 4th or 5th episode. The decision making was getting so intense that at one time I did have to pause the game and take a smoke break and actually think about what I was going to do. I was like, "What am I going to do?" Think about the pros and cons. It was insane, man.
But
it was cool. Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
I was just saying the funny thing about it is it reinvigorated the point and click genre.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of those guys used to work for LucasArts too. Back, did the whole. They worked on, what's the game I'm thinking of, like Sam and Max and Day of the Tentacle, all those classic point and click games for LucasArts back in the 90s. Yeah. A lot of those guys work for Telltale, so you can definitely see the influence, and I mean they're awesome, and I just love the company in general. I'm really enjoying A Wolf Among Us, so it's very similar. I don't know if you've played that. At PAX I played the new Borderlands one coming out soon too, which is interesting. So it's all done in the Borderlands theme, but it's kind of done in the Walking Dead style of gameplay, which is cool. So just love what they're doing over there. It's awesome. Definitely one of my favorite more modern games. Love Far Cry 3. I'm really excited for Far Cry 4 coming out. And then I love just like Knights of the Old Republic. It's got to be one of my favorite games on the original Xbox. Such a great game. So, I mean, I could go off forever on how many games I love, man. It's a loaded question, for sure.
So, as a fan yourself, do you think the industry is improving a heck of a lot now that it's becoming more diverse, you're getting more choice, or do you think it's kind of
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's so diverse, right? I mean, you got simple games you can get free apps on iOS or Android to, major productions and games, Call of Duty or whatever. So, I mean, you have just a huge gamut and choices, and I like the fact that Ouya came out, and that kind of opens up an interesting new area for gamers to play on. And I do think eventually, we're going to be more digital. I know we don't want to talk about it, but I do think the industry is leaning that way where we're going to stop seeing discs. It's all going to be digital. I know they've tried that with the Go, whatever, Sony, PSP Go, and it kind of failed, but I do think eventually it's going to be digital. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, no, same.
Because I like physical copies.
Yeah, it's like being a collector. You basically want to own physical copies of all your games and stuff.
Yeah.
Like going that route, it kind of kills anything, doesn't it?
I can see in the future, right, on YouTube, how now we do the game room tour where we show this is my collection on the shelf and this is what I have. Dude, the future is going to be like these kids, this is my computer and this is my games. It's all on my desktop.
You know what it's going to be like? It's going to be like that video that Jason Heine showed us, that Anarchy Arcade. That's really, really cool, but I could see that being the future, being like, this is my Steam arcade, and you take this virtual tour, you can use like the Oculus Rift, and it's kind of cool, but kind of scary at the same time.
Speaking of Oculus Rift, I'm so excited for that to come out. Like I've played it a number of times, at PAX, and just recently, like about a month ago in Vegas, they had the Classic Gaming Expo. They actually had it there, and they had it running on a Virtual Boy emulator. It looked awesome. It was running through a PC, of course, but it was really cool, and it looked really well. But it was playing through a Super Nintendo controller, so it was a little wacky because the Virtual Boy controller is so different with the two directional pads. But I mean, once you get beyond that, it was really cool. But I mean, I think that is that's gonna be sweet. We'll see what's gonna come out for that. It's gonna be incredible.
Yeah. In terms of the Oculus Rift, have you played it yourself?
Yeah. Played that, and then I played at PAX. There's some games. Like I played a game where I was like skydiving, whatever. It's pretty crazy, pretty surreal. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a great little device. I remember I was playing a game at EGX with the Oculus Rift. It was the first time I used it. I had this weird sense of vertigo because of the fact where in the game itself you get to like kind of fly up above like a mock-up of like New York in a sense, and you're going into different places, different locations, and you really feel like you're immersed in this game. It does kind of trick your senses into believe you're there. And then because I'm not very good with heights, I had this weird sense of vertigo, and I had to keep telling myself like, well, it's just a game. It's just a game. You're not you're not all the way up in the air. You're fine. But it's so weird how immersive gaming has become in comparison to the days where you can just pick up a controller and just play a game. Now they're taking you to that next level, man. It's so amazing at the same time. Jamie, do you have a question that you'd like to put forward to John?
Yeah, we've asked, like, as far as the newer games coming out, I know that you're mainly, like, a retro gamer from what I can tell, but as far as the newer games are concerned, which ones do you think are really taking it to the next level? Like, which ones do you think are really bringing it home for these new generation gamers?
That's a good question. I really liked Destiny a lot. I picked that up, and, just graphically, and it's a really good game, and I think it really shows a good power of the current gen consoles. I played bits and pieces of like Far Cry 4 at PAX, and that looked pretty incredible. I feel like PS4 and Xbox One still have graphically, I think they can get better. Just like with the 360 and PS3, like the first generation games that came out for those systems, you compare those to what are coming out, now. It's a huge difference. I think you're going to see the same thing with now. So I definitely see games like that definitely leading the path, for sure.
So, in terms, basically of, because we're going on to we've talked to you about your favorite systems and also systems that you've had fond memories of. What's the worst system that you owned? What's the one that you sat there and think, why do I own this?
There's several. The Gamecom by Tiger was pretty bad. It's the handheld that had, one of the first handhelds with the touchscreen actually, and it's black and white, but the touchscreen works half the time and it's just awful. But crazy enough, they had some really good, titles for it. They had, Mortal Kombat, and they had Sonic the Hedgehog, and they had some other games for it too, which really surprised me, and some of the publishers they had for it, which is crazy. But there's that. I'm trying to think what another really terrible system there are. A lot of them are, of course, retro old games. I mean, I look back on the last generation. There aren't really terrible systems, I don't think. And any time in the new last 5 years, I don't think terrible. So what do you guys think are some of the worst systems out there?
Oh, for me, the one that I played and I couldn't really get into was the Atari Jaguar. I just didn't find that the system itself. It boasted a lot, but it couldn't really kind of compare itself to that. And in comparison to kind of the older systems you had, where a lot of them had great games, the Jaguar itself didn't really have anything that could actually make the console shine. And from what I've actually researched, it's because of the fact that the way that the console was built, anyone who was developing for it couldn't actually fully utilize the console's 64-bit process.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. That's a good pick. I could definitely see it. I mean, the controller is terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are a few select games, though. Tempest 2000, definitely worth getting. Doom is a really good one. Alien vs. Predator is another great title for that. But, I mean, out of, the 40 titles that came out, 50 titles came out for it, 3 of them are good. That's not a very good ratio. And it kind of released the Jaguar CD, on its deathbed, which was stupid by Atari. So that's a pretty rare console too. So
they
it's
tend
interesting.
to do that a lot though, don't they, with game companies? Every time the console's on its last legs, they tend to either release a game or a peripheral for the system that necessarily won't sell as well as it should be, because well, they're writing the console off. They're literally just putting the console to bed. I think one of the ones that I know that are most notorious for, which you actually have a copy of, is the N64 DD.
Right.
That system itself has, it has all the potential to become something really good, but Nintendo kept screwing the pooch on it in a sense. They wanted to release it, then they didn't. Then they wanted to release it, then they didn't. And then eventually when they did release the system, they were already working towards the GameCube.
Right. That's a great point. I mean, that's an interesting system because I have a few games for it. Like, for example, they have an F-Zero game for the disc drive that came out. And what's really cool about that is you need the F-Zero cart to play it, but you can actually design your own, tracks. And there's a lot of cool things you can do on it. They have new expanded tracks. And, I mean, the fact that you can design your own track, I think, is cool in itself. They have a SimCity game for it as well, SimCity 64. Yeah. And that's really cool because you actually go, city level and, first person and start talking to the citizens, which is awesome. Graphically, and so really fast. You think disk drive, everything else can be slow loading. It actually loads pretty fast.
Yeah.
And they have a Mario Artist series, which kind of is a sequel to Mario Paint, which we all know and love. And those are cool too. So the games that did come out for it are great and a lot of fun. Unfortunately, like you said, it was kind of put out it wasn't very marketed very well, and it was only through mail order in Japan only. So it just kind of shows you how rare it is. It's interesting. I think I got mine lucky. I got mine right when I bought mine maybe 6 years ago, and I want to say I paid $700 for it, but it came complete with 7 games. But now it's probably twice that.
Yeah,
so it's pretty crazy.
That's another thing that I find that Nintendo tend to do is where if they lose faith in something, they'll just we're going to throw it out there anyway. We'll throw it out there.
Right.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But they tend to kind of pull everything away from that and go, well, let's work on the next project. They're not as bad as what kind of Sega did, because Sega was doing.
I was going to say Sega's worse. Yeah. I mean, you look at Sega with the 32X, and then they're releasing that and they're working on the Saturn at the same time, and Sega North America had no idea what Sega Japan was doing. The right-handed had no idea what the left hand was doing, so when 32X hit the market, Japan's okay, we're going to release the Saturn pretty much right after release it, and it's just what's the point? It's it's so bad.
It was one of those things where, a lot, I think, of the reason why people were kind of getting annoyed with Sega was the fact that they were just releasing console after console without giving people time to breathe. It's like shoving everybody into a crowded room and just going, hey, I'm in your face constantly. Oh, look, another system, and you can buy it now. It's really? We just got the other one. Mm-hmm. It was a bit of time.
my thing about Nintendo is, I think all of you guys can agree with me, is Nintendo, and I talked about this on another podcast, they kind of have this yin and yang type of attitude where Nintendo would do something really cool, and I'm like, hell yeah, Nintendo. And they'll turn around and just do something. I'm like, what the fuck, Nintendo? I don't know why they do that, but they'll, be like, hey, we were coming out with this awesome new game. I'm like, great. And I'm like, but it doesn't have online support. And I'm like, aw, it's so funny how they do that.
Well,
it is funny. Yeah, good point.
Well, there's another thing, because they have a very nice little niche of marketing stuff that's very innovative at the same time. It's for instance, they've now just releasing something for the Wii U and new 3DS systems called Amiibos, where it takes a page out of the Skylanders book, but these become not just cross-platform, they're more kind of cross-game. So you can use these little things in Mario Kart 8, Super Smash Brothers, and I believe they're going to be releasing other titles where you can actually utilize these little figurines. It comes to the point where it's a great marketing idea, but it does go back to what they were doing originally with the NES when they sold the system with Rob. They're trying to make the system more of a toy, in a sense, to kind of get that extra little bit of marketing through. And it's great.
It was it was a Trojan horse, wasn't it? It was kind of trying to, yeah, exactly. It was great marketing. Absolutely.
Because they're taking the whole idea of having it as a toy and saying, well, there's a game console behind it. But now they're like, well, here's a game console, but you do get a toy with it as well. So this thing is going to kind of revolutionize the way that Nintendo manufacture these systems.
It's interesting too, because it's kind of catering to, the kids that are playing Skylanders. It's something that's familiar for them, but it's also kind of catering to us that are big collectors, because I'm it's one of those things, when they announced the Amiibos, I'm like, I'm going to have to get all of them. I want to have to build a special shelf in my game room just to display them. It's just one of those things that it's just like, it's so cool, but it's not original, but it's awesome,
It's definitely not original. I mean, you look at Disney had Infinity, and that came out after Skylanders, So it's like it is cool, though. I mean, you're definitely targeting both markets. You're targeting the toy collector or the people who buy toys, and you're also targeting people who play games. I think it's smart, and I think Amiibos will do well for Nintendo for sure.
Yeah, and
just think of all the characters they can come up with. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing about it as well is, if you look at the way that they're utilizing this, it's a great kind of marketing plan, because their console is seen as kind of a kiddies console, and they're kind of not shying away from that anymore. They're like, okay, we're going to do things rather differently, and we can release something where, we know that people of all ages are going to enjoy. And it's kind of my go-to console as well. It's my go-to console for my kids. My kids love, playing their Nintendos, and it's the console of choice that they always migrate to. And it's not a bad thing whatsoever. Yeah. It's one of those where at least I know it can give them that structure and reliability, and they won't play a game that's, kind of got a bit too much, action or, too much blood or anything in them.
Imagine, okay, I'm just thinking next year is the 30th anniversary for the NES, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if Nintendo decided to come out with a special limited edition new NES system. How well do you think that would sell?
What, a new NES system?
Oh, it would sell like hotcakes. I mean, look at the NES 3DS. I mean, they came out with that, and people are buying it left and right. And I'm like, hey guys, you guys might want to wait. There's a new 3DS model that's about to come out next year. And they're like, we don't care. It's the NES, and it looks awesome. So I think it would sell really well if they did something like that. It'd be a nice little throwback, definitely.
And come out with Mario Brothers 4 or something like that, Super Mario Brothers 4, a new game that's done in the old school graphics.
Do you like cartridges? Awesome. Do you like cartridges, but they're like little mini USBs or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another thing as well, because you notice how over time these old consoles and old systems, you're able to basically fit the size of a cartridge into something so small in terms of storage. I could probably fit my entire NES library onto a USB drive now. That's something huge, especially with the fact that how technology is progressing. So if Nintendo wanted to, they could literally release something specialized, as Xander was saying, and just having these little USB games or something for it, just taking an old idea and just releasing it in a new way.
Yeah, almost like what SNK did with the Neo Geo X. Better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys ever saw the Neo Geo X or not, but I mean, it was a cool concept, and having the handheld, and I mean, with this clamshell and the the SD cards with the the games built into it. I mean, that's awesome, but execution wise, it wasn't very good, but it wasn't bad. But I think
I'll ask you about that system though as well. Why do you think it? Because most of us have seen the horrors behind it, because apparently it wasn't made.
I bought it day one.
Poor Xander. I know for a fact that the system itself wasn't what SNK Playmore expected. They were pretty ashamed of it.
Emulated games bad. It just emulated games not to where they should be. I think, the controller's really cool, and I like the idea. You can load the handheld into the system and, close it up and play it on your TV. I think that's a good idea, but just, I think emulation, it turned out to be just like an emulator. People would play that on the PSP, to be quite frank with you, so they're like, why should I get it?
Yeah, and that's another thing as well. It's, because I saw someone actually take one of these little systems apart. It was kind of badly designed. The inside, it looked like it was a huge cluster inside that thing. What do you think?
Right.
Happened? Do you think that in terms of the partnership, that SNK kind of gave the company that designed it a bit more free reign than they should have?
Probably. Because didn't SNK pull the plug on it?
They did, yeah. They basically had to take them to court and stop them from selling the systems, because they were still going to sell them. They was like, well, we're just going to continue making them and selling them. And SNK just basically got involved and was like, well, we've got to take legal action, get this shut down quick because it's going to ruin our name in a sense. But in terms of stuff like that, let's go on to kind of bad emulation as well. Currently, do you know the Retron 5, a system that's, you know, it was kind of hailed as an all-in-one system where you could play everything, you know, and it had like a high def emulation in terms of your kart-based games, and it was considered to be one of the crown jewels of game making. So tell a little bit about that system. What kind of went wrong here? Because they're now going in for a kind of a big lawsuit, aren't they?
Oh, are they? I haven't heard about the lawsuit.
Yeah, they apparently they've used some code in the system that they thought was kind of free license, but it turns out it wasn't.
Oh wow!
And a lot of and it's kind of stalled in terms of manufacturing of the system itself because they don't know if they're going to update the system or if this could be they could end up discontinuing the system. Xander, you know a little bit more about this, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, they pretty much what you said. They took some emulation codes that they thought were free use, or they even claimed that was they didn't even give credit to the codes they got, and they put it out, and the original developers got wind of it, and now they're slapping them with a huge lawsuit right now. I think if the lawsuit goes through, I think Hyperkin's going to owe around like it's going to be a pretty penny. I know it's somewhere in the millions mark right now. So
wow,
it's pretty bad. Which, I mean, the Retron 5 right now it's already hard to get, and it is a sought-after all-in-one console for retro gamers. It's kind of a mixed bag. Some people love it, some people hate it, but a lot of people want it. So what I'm fearing about it is, since the price is already going up with this lawsuit story, it's just going to make resellers sell it like more than a freaking Xbox One at the end of the day. It's going to get pretty bad.
So wow. So I know it's been hard to find in stores. That's probably why, huh?
Yeah.
It's news to me. That's interesting.
Yeah, because they've had like loads of different things going on with the system itself, and I know in terms of what's going on with Hyperkin, they haven't actually released any info about it. They've just kind of stayed quiet about the whole situation. In terms of like the release of systems such as that, and there was a new one, Xander, remember that one that you were telling me about, the NES emulator, the NES Famicom emulator, emulated system that kind of. Apparently it was made from real Famicom parts, and it was supposed to be like for $500.
Yeah, the story about this, and I know you're familiar with this company, Gamester. It's the Neo, it's the guys that make the really nice Neo Geo MVS consoles.
Right, the wood ones. Right.
Yeah, they're made of like exotic woods and stuff like that. Well, they made a Nintendo Famicom system that's made of like this really nice metal, like alloy or whatever, and it's got 4 controller ports. It's got HDMI. And they're selling it for like $500, and they say it's supposed to be completely compatible because it's actually made from Nintendo and Famicom parts as opposed to emulation. So, it's one of those companies that, you know, they're not for the average consumer anyway. I mean, these are kind of like the Rolls Royce of collectors that buy this kind of stuff. But what are your thoughts about this, Gamester? Because I mean, that's pretty insane. $500.
It is. It's definitely not cheap. And I know the guy personally, though. He's a good guy, and these are really high quality systems. And you know, it's kind of like when you compare cars. This is like the Jaguar of consoles, right? Or this is like the Mercedes-Benz of consoles. You know, so it's definitely a niche market. You know, you can't expect everyone to do this $500.
Yeah, because I mean, it is. His MVS consoles are amazing. I'd love to have one day because, like you said, they make them out of wood, like these really nice wood finishes. And I mean, it looks legit. And even the arcade sticks are made from actual arcade parts and stuff like that. It's crazy.
So, you know, let's think about that. Do you think that the releasing consoles like these newer, more bigger systems that use the template of like these old like consoles like the Famicom and the NES, is that something that we think is kind of viable in the market, or are they just they're just manufacturing these for consumers who would generally buy this, because it's kind of a niche thing, isn't it?
And you're referring to these like clone consoles that are coming out?
Yeah.
Like Hyperkin or Retrobit?
Yeah.
I think there's a market for it. I think for those who don't have all those systems, it's nice to have a Retron 5 because you can play, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy games, you can play Super Nintendo games and NES games. So it's definitely convenient, but it definitely emulates, in that case, particularly with a Retron 5, it doesn't emulate the games as well as it normally should, because that's interesting though about the lawsuit. It's funny, it's ironic because these people who are writing these emulators are in a sense stealing games themselves. They're not paying paid for it, of course, but then they're suing someone for stealing their stuff. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, it's a kind of weird thing where I think no one wants to acknowledge anybody else, which it's kind of it's funny in one retrospect, and in another it's just like, come on, work together and get this out there, because everybody, the retro market in a sense in itself is, I wouldn't say kind of a niche market, but it's one that's kind of easily manipulated, because you've got like people releasing modded carts and trying to say they're the real games. I know Johnny Millennium, the Happy Console Gamer, did a video recently on basically getting repo carts, and I think the one that he was talking about was the PC Engine, and one of the carts that he had for that, it was a repo cart. You got it for a fair price, and how people are trying to sell these carts at the moment for like the same price that you would get the original thing for.
Right.
And it's becoming to the fact where people are basing a very volatile market.
Yes, it's shitty.
Yeah, it kind of manipulates those who want to get a good deal, who want a good price, and who just want to enjoy they're collecting in a sense. And it's one of those things where I don't see the retro market being something very, very viable in the next 5 years.
It's one of those things that, never in my years of collecting, I would think that not only when we buy games on eBay, we would look at the condition, of course, but now I hear people on forums and trade sites, they're like, I need to see the circuit board. Like, they have to see if it's legit actual cart and circuit, compared to what it was like, 3 or 4 years ago. It used to be this, oh, that's, Little Samson, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. But now it's like, is that really Little Samson? It's so weird.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you've got these games and people like releasing a ton of these different repo like carts in terms of games, and it's getting to the part where people are trying to get as clued in as possible so they don't get ripped off. But saying that, like, kind of steering clear from that and going on to back to kind of your collections. What's your favourite controller? Because I know a few people have been going on in terms of their debates. They like a PS3 controller, the Xbox 360. Others like, say, their kind of classic controls. Which ones for you is the controller that you like to use the most?
That's a good question. I like the Xbox controller a lot, or the Xbox 360 controller. I like that a lot. I feel like it fits my hands a little better than like the PS3 or PS4, or even PS2 or 1 for that matter. But as far as like retro controllers go, I really like the N64 controller. Granted, it only has the one analog stick, but it was so revolutionary when it came out. And you can hold it so many different ways. I really like that. I'm not a huge fan of the GameCube controller, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people love the GameCube controller. I'm not knocking it, but it was kind of funky to me. It's the controls. But, even the Super Nintendo controllers look good, too. Classic.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Yeah, some of my favourites I would actually say as well would have to go to like the Super Nintendo controller, which I'm trying to find a USB variation of that I can use on my PC. And I do like my Xbox 360 controller, because it's kind of the standard one that they use for the Wii U now as well, in terms of like the template that they use. Xander, what about yourself?
My favorite controller, actually, like retro controller, would be the Super NES. I really like the feel of that one. But my favorite controller would probably be the PlayStation. I really love the way that feels, and It's funny because it was the one controller that I didn't think I would like because it was such a different design with the extra shoulder buttons and the D-pad didn't connect. And it used and this is going to sound funny, it used shapes instead of like numbers or letters. I was like, this is so wild. But over the test of time, I mean, it is a good controller and it's been proven to be a good controller because they've used it in every single console. I mean, PlayStation 4 was the first time they actually kind of changed it up a little bit. And I don't know if you guys remember when the PS3 was first coming out and they were showing pictures of it. You remember they actually were going to change the controller back then and it looked more like a boomerang controller. You guys remember that?
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, look up some early pictures of the PS3
I
and
do.
yeah, look it up and it's weird. It's really weird. I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah,
I do remember that.
It's odd.
What about you, Jamie? What's your favourite controllers?
Well, I'm kind of out of the loop here because I've never really, my family didn't have a lot of, money and stuff growing up, and I didn't know a lot of people who had the older systems. And so, while I have played like the NES and the N64 and things like that, I haven't really truly experienced gaming on one yet. So I would have to say that my favorite controller has to be the PlayStation 2 controller, not necessarily the PlayStation 3 controller, because I feel like those are shorter and it doesn't fit in my hands really comfortably. I have to do the PlayStation 2 because my hands are so tiny that any other controller is just too big. I'm like, this feels really awkward.
Well, that's for those. I'd say it's kind of in terms of controllers, you have to be very, very comfortable for what you're using, and it has to kind of fit you like a glove in a sense. I know.
Right.
For me, the Super Nintendo did just that. I remember as a kid, just at the age of 13, playing this console and not having any issues with it because it was so easy to hold onto this controller and just go with the games. Now, going from that, let's ask you a little bit about kind of where, in terms of systems themselves, have you owned an OnLive, for instance, John? I think you did talk a little bit about it.
I do have an OnLive, yeah. It's interesting. That's a system that you can basically stream with games, right? Online.
Yeah, it's kind of basis that was used by Microsoft and Sony at the moment to kind of, it's kind of the same formula that they're using now, in a sense, in terms of the downloadable games that you can get. What kind of went wrong with that system? Because I know they released it. They hoped that there would be a market. I know games were kind of a big issue because they weren't getting the games on release date the same that Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo were getting. They were getting them probably 3 to 4 months afterwards.
Right. I think it was just too ahead of its time. I mean, really, it was because I remember the games being laggy, and the connection, my bandwidth wasn't big enough. I just think it would have come out 2 years down the road. It would have done a lot better. Yeah.
Do you think it still stands a chance now? Because I know they're still operating, but they're kind of using their gaming standpoint as one of many different factors. I know they deal with cloud storage and stuff like that now as well, but they still have these systems, but they're not as the OnLive box and the OnLive controllers aren't as frequently available as they used to be.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't know, I thought OnLive was done, wasn't it?
Oh, well, they basically, what happened, I think there was a bit of controversy that went through where the company kind of sold, they took all their assets, they closed the original company down, costing tons of people of jobs and also their investments, and migrated everything into a second company. So it's still going, but it's not, it's not what it used to be, basically.
Okay.
So, from that one, do you think that because it was ahead of its time, because they didn't have as much access to, say, someone like Sony or Microsoft did in terms of games, do you think that it kind of was one of those things that was missed the boat on? It was something that could have been a great opportunity that, if released kind of now, you would have seen a lot more from?
Yeah, I think it would have done better if it was released now than when it was released before. I mean, a lot of things you can do on it, like you can actually record some of your gameplay and share it with friends. I mean, you can do that now on current consoles. You know, you can watch someone play as well, you know, live, which is cool. And I just think, again, the bandwidth was an issue. I know they had issues with games not being released right away and stuff like that. So I think if it would have come out now, it would have done a lot better for sure.
Xander, you got another question for us?
No. No, I mean, I was going to say, I was just going to talk about the on live. I mean, it was just, I agree with Gamester. I think it did come out way ahead of its time. And how is the controller to that, by the way?
It's not bad. It's very similar to like Xbox controller, Xbox 360 remote. So it's not too bad.
Huh.
Let me ask.
It's almost identical. Yeah.
Let me ask a little bit about your other projects as well, because you've got a website that you have up, and you do have like YouTubers and sort of vloggers and gaming journalists that work with you exclusively. How did that come to about? How did you get that project off the ground?
That came to be because I have a good friend I grew up with, Tyler Griffin, and him and I are good friends, and he works for part of his job, he works for this web development company, and he got me hooked up with these guys, and this happened about 3 years ago, and we just launched it, and it's a lot of work to put together a website, I won't lie, but it's been a lot of fun, and I got some good contributors to it, and it's grown for sure.
So what do you look for when you have like certain individuals that you'd want in terms of talent that you've been scouting for? Do you look at kind of the content that they produce, if it's something that hasn't already been done, or is it more due to the way that they actually present themselves?
I think all the above. I mean, the way they present themselves is important. You know, they've got to be knowledgeable what they're talking about, and it's got to, you know, I try to look for unique shows that are different than your everyday gaming show, because there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of good shows out there, don't get me wrong. But yeah, you know, it's just a lot of them are good friends of mine, personal friends too, which is cool.
Yeah, so that kind of helps because you're working with people that you can trust, I believe.
Absolutely.
In terms of your channel as well, you have several different facets that come out of that channel, because you know, before it used to be you showing off your gaming collection and talking about the various systems, but you have several different parts of the channel as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Where do all these ideas come from, and how do you kind of how would you like measure these shows that you put together? Because I know you have like the console reviews, but you also have kind of I remember closely you had like a series kind of analyzing certain years in gaming and stuff as well. How do you kind of put that all together? When does this content come available, and how do you kind of judge the success of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think I'm probably best known for my console reviews. Those are probably the videos that get the most views, and people think of my channel, they probably think of console reviews. But I don't want to be typecasted into like just that's all I do. You know, I want variety. So, you know, I do store reviews. Like I walk through stores, and you know, all over, because of my job, I do a lot of traveling, and maybe go to some really cool game stores. So I'll do some of that. I'll do a top 10 video every once in a while. I'll do some of that. You know, I'll do some. Every once in a while, I'll do like a pickup video. I know a lot of people do that, but I'll do a pickup video. Just try to keep. I think a little variety is always good for a channel. I even have like, if you go on my channel, I have a how to make beer. A couple of videos on how I do home brewing. So I even posted a couple of videos on how to homebrew beer, and I forget what they did. I think it was like an ale. So I mean, totally random, right? But you know, I think variety is always a good thing for a show.
Yeah, it is, because you know, it's kind of giving people the unexpected in a sense, because you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself into one kind of thing. You also have the Gamester 81 Arcade channel as well, about like the various arcade systems that you've either owned or that you've basically come across in your travels. How did that come about? Is it because of your love for like the arcade systems in general, or did you just say, you know, this?
Yeah, for sure. You know, like I mentioned before earlier in the podcast, I'm a big fan of arcades, hence why I love ColecoVision so much. So again, with my travels, I'm able to go to some really cool arcades, and I do walkthroughs of arcades, and I'll do reviews of some arcade games, and you know, I just want to kind of do a separate niche, because I understand there's people who watch my show and Gamester normal show that may not like arcades as much as I do. So that would be appropriate to do a different channel. I also have a Star Wars channel, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. In fact, my Star Wars collection is bigger than my gaming collection, believe it or not. But I'm actually going to be launching a Star Wars site here in about a week, swnet77.com. And that's just, again, I like doing Star Wars reviews, figures and news. And I mean, this is an exciting time to be a Star Wars fan because you got episode 7 in the works coming out soon, you know? So a lot of cool things going on there. And probably my favorite channel, though, that I have is my Nostalgiaholic show, which is like where I talk about. One. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that's from the 90s. So like stuff like I grew up with, items and toys, and you know, I just found like, for example, you guys remember Pogs?
Oh yeah,
from the 90s.
I own loads of those.
So I found my old Pog maker. I've actually had a maker where you can make your own Pogs, which is cool. So I'm gonna do a video on that soon. And just random stuff, you know, like He-Man to like just random stuff, things I remember growing up with that I'm nostalgic for. So
I think we should get some. I think we should get some Gamester 81 Pogs.
That'd be funny, dude. That'd be hilarious.
Or even All Gen Gamers get a whale Pog.
There you go. The whale could be the Slammer, you know, and then we could be the Pogs. For sure. That's awesome. But you know, that's just like that's a fun channel too, and I just kind of did that for fun, and obviously do all my things for fun. But you know, I have like 12,000 subscribers on that channel, which is amazing in itself, and that's great. I had no idea it would grow that big, you know. So it's pretty awesome to see.
So in terms of like, because Xander just brought that up, which I thought we could segue into, All Gen Gamers. How did that come about?
Yeah, so we've been doing that for a while. I mean, you guys have been doing your podcast for a while too, so you know how it is. I mean, it's just friends, you know, like you guys are, you know, just talking. And initially it was just Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer Show, myself and Pete Dorr, and we'd always just talk on Skype, you know, just like the three of us on Skype. And I forget who suggested, it might have been Johnny or Pete, but one of them suggested, you know, it'd be kind of interesting to record our conversations and post it. Because that's basically what we did anyway, you know? And then, so we started just doing that. And then I think like 3 episodes into it, we brought on Jason Heine, which is a good friend of mine. He actually lives like, at the time he was like literally my neighbor, practically lived in the same block as I did. But now he lives in the same area. He's about a half hour away from me, but he's moved. Yeah, so we brought him on board. He's an audio engineer. So he just brought the whole podcast to the next level as far as just quality of audio quality, you know, and cutting all that, you know, all that hard stuff you can do. But it's been fun, man. I think we're on episode like 183, and we did a live panel in Portland last week at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and that was a blast.
So let's to ask a little bit about Portland. How was that like? Because I know a lot of like mainstays on YouTube. You had the Happy Console Gamer, you had Alpha Omega Sin, you had loads of different people down there interacting and integrating with fans. And from what I've heard from Rob, it's been an experience and a half. What's it like, you know, meeting all the people that kind of watch your channel and know you and kind of idolize you in a sense?
It's super cool. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off there, Michael. It's super cool, and very humbling, man. You know, I mean, people come up to me, and they act like they know me really well because they watch my show, of course. And I don't know who they are necessarily. So they assume kind of I know who they are and I don't. And it's cool to meet them. You know, and it's cool to shake their hands and find out what their hobbies and interests are and how they found out about the show. You know, I had a father who came up with me with his daughter, and she was like maybe 7, and he's like, I watch your show with my daughter. And that's really cool. And what's really cool is you get like the young gamers, like the guys who are like 10 years younger or even 13 or whatever, and they're into the NES and they're into the Super Nintendo and they're into the retro games, and they're like, you got me into this. And that's super cool. Again, like, I never thought I would ever get to where I am when I started this channel, and I don't consider myself like a YouTube sensation or a star or anything like that. I'm just a normal gamer, just posting stuff to YouTube, you know what I'm saying, on my site. Yeah. So it's really humbling when people come up to you and they're like, this one guy brought up, what game was it? I forget it was. It was like a super rare Super Nintendo game, and he wanted me to sign it. Like, dude, I don't want to ruin it, you know? Like, I don't want to ruin it for you. Are you sure you want me to sign it? And he's like, yeah, man, please sign it. And I'm like, okay, but I was very hesitant because I felt weird because I felt like I was devaluing it, you know, but he was all about it, you know, so, it was cool. It was very cool. Great experience. You guys go, for sure. I know it's hard. You need to start your own, expo there in the UK, man, for sure.
Yeah, no, I've been to like a ton of them recently because my kind of I myself is kind of my whole journalistic kind of career has picked up this year.
Right.
From just doing small little videos on my YouTube channel to I Got Gameplay to now going to all these expos. I was in Manchester for Play Expo. I did EGX a couple of weeks back. Now I've got MCM Comic Con Expo coming up the next 3 days. So I'll be in a ton of people up there.
Have fun. yeah. You have fun, and next time know that you're flying over here. You're putting me in your suitcase, and then you're taking me back.
Small enough to
Smuggler.
Fit too.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm small enough to fit in your suitcase, like legit. I know for a fact that I can fit in a suitcase because I tried to fit.
So what do you carry on?
Yeah,
you carry on.
Yeah, I'll just be like, okay, that's fine.
So it might get a bit difficult if we have to take my cosplays with me.
Nice.
But it is one of those things where you find that you've, like, from when you start to you're doing something because you love it. Part of the reason I started my channel is because I wanted to just talk to people about the things that I like and about stuff that's passionate to me. And it's pretty similar to like how you've done your channel and how Johnny did his channel. And it's just like letting people know about what you enjoy, and it's kind of migrated into this bigger thing. It's become something that you would never have expected. I don't think any of us have expected it now. I know Xander with his channel, he's kind of hosted he's going to be, did you host that panel, Xander, or are you going to be?
I'm gonna be in December. Actually, it's gonna be my first panel. I'm really excited.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. You'll have a blast. It's nerve-wracking.
Panels are so much fun.
It's nerve-wracking at first, and I was nervous when I got my front of my panel. But once you start talking, you just get your mind off of it, and it's just like it's gravy from there, So it's all good.
It's funny because I'm trying to do the presentation. It's going to be on how to start a YouTube channel and do podcasting, and I'm trying to get a PowerPoint together. I feel like I'm back in high school. I feel like I'm getting ready for this like big ass project, and I'm trying not to procrastinate.
Right on. Right on. Well, that'd be great, man. I think you'll have a blast for sure.
So, in terms of like that, how did you like kind of go into from doing this channel and starting to get contact from all these like expos and stuff to come down and do panels and stuff like that? Was it just kind of one of those things that happened by accident, or did they just basically, it kind of became something that was more organic? It was, you knew how big the channel was getting, you knew how much viewership you were getting to the point where when it wasn't that much of a surprise.
I think it was organic for sure. I mean, in regards to Portland Retro Gaming Expo, this is my third year going in a row. So, and I actually was going to go like 4 years ago, and it wasn't the cards for me. But, you just see people's videos on them, and just being part of the community, you talk to people, as you guys know, and people say, I went to this panel, or I went to this expo, you should definitely check it out. And in the case of Portland, it's just grown so big. I mean, I'm not sure how many people they had last weekend. I want to say it's, in the thousands, so it was huge. And even from last year, it's so much bigger. This is the largest one they've had yet. So I know Chuck Van Pelt, he's the guy who runs it, and I know him pretty well. I'm just good friends with him, just met him at other expos, and he just, him and I just kind of worked together on it, so it's great.
So in terms of that, I know, like, for instance, you're a dad. You've become a dad quite recently of twins, I believe.
Yeah.
What would you expect, like, because I know as a parent yourself, do you feel that the gaming market itself accommodates for your kids and also for adults as well? It's kind of one of those things that has a variety of kind of facets for everyone, or do you think that there's, in terms of content, there's not really much variety out there?
No, I think there's variety. I mean, with the kids, you have leapfrogs, and you have things you can always buy in that are games, but they're like educational games. I wouldn't, and I think a lot of it's just to go with parenting and what you expose your kids to, and at what age. What age should they start playing Call of Duty? It's a parental decision that they should make as parents. I think the importance of parenting is you got to teach your kids what's right and wrong and what's real and fake. In the case of video games, it's fake. It's not real. Now, would you want to go out and shoot people in life? No. That's your responsibility to teach your kids what's right and wrong, and I think people who blame violence on video games are ignorant and just, that's sad. Because I don't think video games cause violence. I think people cause violence.
It's the same thing. So. Yeah. It's actually quite funny when you've got, like, especially in the United States, you've got a country that's kind of more pro-gun, but at the same time, when something happens, when someone picks that gun up and starts doing something, they're like, no, blame the video games. It's like, okay.
Yeah. No one wants to take responsibility for their actions or their kids' actions. They blame it on something else. I think video games are an easy target, unfortunately. So.
No, I totally agree. I remember today I went to pick my boys up from school, and I've got 4 little ones myself, 2 girls, 2 boys, and their teacher basically just went to me, your son didn't listen, this is what's happened, I had to put him on the naughty spot because the 2 of them were fighting. And I basically just talked to them and said, look, you guys know better, you shouldn't be doing this. And their teacher just had this big look on her face, like her eyes wide, and she was like, they're silent. These children are silent. What, how do you do that? And I'm just like, I'm their dad. They know respect. Do you know what I mean? It's
right.
Yeah, she's like, you got this little 3-year-old.
You established that day one, right?
Yeah. It's like you got this little 3-year-old and 4-year-old who just won't, if I say something to them, they're just like silent. And they're walking with me and their mum's saying to me like, they're really quiet. I was just like, yeah, because they know dad doesn't like the way that they're behaving. And, and I got them on a video game ban at the moment. They've got like a 2-week video game ban because they've behaved, they behaved basically inappropriately because they get like, anytime they're with me, they get some video game time. They get probably about an hour or 2 hours of video game time on the Wii U. And, with that situation, I've said, no, you've both been misbehaving. You're not getting your Nintendo 2DS. You're not going to basically be playing on the Wii U. You can watch your sisters play it, but you're not going to touch it. And, their behavior's kind of picked up a little bit. And it's one of those things where you have to know the line. You know what you're doing, kind of as a parent yourself. And you just got to know what they can and can't watch. And I think, when I was a kid, my parents had a great way of kind of establishing that already. So they knew exactly what the line was, if they had to explain something, they would explain it. And I think that's kind of missed nowadays. A lot of parents are like, well, my son, it's not my son, it's a video game. Your son was playing Call of Duty. Why was he playing Call of Duty? Oh, it's just a toy. No, it's not. You've got a game there. He shouldn't be playing. He shouldn't be exposed to. Right. You're exposing him to this. I'm not saying that the game itself exposed him to it, but it's, it's one of those things you sit there and think, okay, come on. You know how to be a parent. It doesn't, it's one of those things that I find it's kind of instinctive. It's not one of those things that you sit there and go, well, I don't know how to be a proper parent. There's a manual for this. There's not really that, you kind of get your...
Yeah, there's no books, right?
Yeah. Just kind of get yourself involved.
Common sense. Yeah, exactly. You take life lessons. You take life lessons of what you grew up with and you try to apply it, teach your kids that, exactly. That's what you do.
And funny thing about it is where you've got into that new phase, because when I look at the gaming industry as well, it's gone full circle, because especially in the British industry where we went from a time where one person could program a game, and with the inclusion of app games and like mods and stuff like that, you can still have that you can now, it's gone back to the whole individual programming a game for themselves and releasing it to the world. And I find that kids today, because of the whole access they have to all these systems and basically to like the education that they receive, they're extremely smart in comparison to the way that things were done previously. The way that they learn is so different in comparison to the way that we used to learn. And it does make me laugh because when I look at my daughters, she's doing maths equations that when I was her age, I wouldn't have any clue what these were and how I was supposed to be doing them.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And it's fun to see. But going on from that, the one thing I want to find out is, what's your opinion on app games? Like mobile phone games and stuff like that. Do you think they have their place in terms of the way that the gaming market currently stands, or do you have in terms of what you see for them? You're like, yeah, you know what, they're just stuff that you can use to pass the time. Because I know considerably, like the handheld market has kind of been taken over by mobile gaming apps, in a sense. They've replaced a lot of the handheld consoles.
Sure. I do think there's a place for them. I mean, you have games even like Knights of the Republic that you can play on an iPad now. That's pretty incredible. I mean, graphically, the games now are getting pretty good, and you get it for cheap. I'm a big fan of like the Pinball Arcade app. I don't know if you guys have played that or not. I think it's on iOS and Android, and basically these pinball emulator like tables that you can play. They just released Ghostbusters yesterday, which is cool. So I'm a big fan of it. I like it because they're cheap, like $5 each. They're cheap. You can play it. I mean, is it what I spend most of my time playing? No, but they're, when I'm on the traveling or my plane or whatever, they're convenient. They're there on my phone or my iPad, and I'll play them. So it doesn't replace my gaming for like console gaming, but I do think there's a place for it. And obviously, a lot of people have phones and people are buying these games, so it will be around for a while, I think.
So in terms of kind of the biggest gaming company out there at the moment, who do you think is kind of standing head and shoulders above the rest?
Wow. I like Ubisoft a lot. I think they've got some good stuff going for them. Of course, you got the Activision stuff. Call of Duty is always big, and you got like EA is always big too. But I think Telltale's really grown a lot in the past few years with Walking Dead, we talked about before. I think they've got a nice niche. Obviously, they're not the biggest, but I think they've got a nice niche. That's a tough question. What do you guys think?
I know Xander's not a fan of Ubisoft, are you, Xander?
No, but
no.
I think
why is that? Just curious.
This could be a whole new podcast.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Sweet version.
I just don't really like some of their practices they've been doing recently with the the showing off games on high-powered PCs, then dumbing them down on consoles, and I don't really like how they're doing Nintendo. I mean, they're doing Nintendo really, really badly, and saying that Nintendo doesn't want Nintendo fans don't want mature-rated games because they were basing it off of Assassin's Creed that came out a year and a half on other consoles, and it sold 200,000 copies. Where Just Dance sold 250,000, but then again, Just Dance had a lot more promotion than a year-old video game on a brand new console that no one knew about. So,
right.
That's my thing about it. But I was going to say a company that I think that's doing really well that I want to see more of is WayForward. I really love WayForward. They had that little retro niche. And also, Yacht Studios, I believe that's what they're called, the people behind Shovel Knight, that were
Shovel
actually,
Knight,
that yacht club, like they were actually members from WayForward, and they left WayForward and made that company, and they just had that niche for making those old retro concepts into a brand new platform that's enjoyable to everyone, and I really like that.
Sure. That's great.
Well, that's something that we can ask you actually as well. What do you think about the return of retro at the moment? Because, it's kind of become something very predominant this year, and it's kind of slowly gravitating even more further because of you've got the Kickstarters coming out now. You have companies that are building themselves based on these retro platforms. Like we've seen games like Shovel Knight, for instance, that are making their release onto consoles like the Wii U, the 3DS, the PlayStation 3 and 4, and also the Xbox One, Xbox 360. Do you think the fact that we have this kind of beloved market, that it's becoming more and more kind of like affluent in a sense? It's growing. It's becoming something that's again has grown from a niche market to kind of a culture in gaming in a sense, because retro seems to be the new big thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it is. I mean, you look at, I think a lot of it goes on nostalgia, and a lot of people I love the 8-bit sound. It's audio, music and stuff is brilliant. And I like the graphical look of it too. And, you look at games like Super Meat Boy and, games like that have an old school graphical feel that are really fun games, but super challenging. And I think those games like that are successful because they kind of tug at our, even like, Minecraft, or, Minecraft, you know, like games like that, like, they just really tug at our nostalgic hearts, and I think people our age are a fan of that.
Yeah, that's another thing on that one, because my kids love Minecraft. To the point,
right.
where, you know, and a lot of the big YouTube channels out there now are Minecraft channels. You know, you've got like DTM, you've got I think one they watched a lot, which is Stampy Longhead, and it's all like based around that kind of world, because it's kind of like the new Lego in a sense, because you have this gaming world where you can break stuff up, you can make stuff, you can manufacture stuff, you can, if you get really good at it, you can make like amazing buildings using this platform. Why do you think it's gotten so big? Is it because of the fact that it's rather unique and it's very simplistic in a sense that anyone can pick it up?
I think this probably has a lot to do with it. I've never gotten into it personally myself. I've only played it once, and it wasn't my cup of tea, but it is huge. Like you said, there's people on Twitch that play it all the time, and a lot of subscribers, a lot of viewership, and you know, I think it kind of goes towards that creativity end. You can kind of build your own stuff, and people like that, the simplistic type of, you know, I think that's just probably a big part of it for sure.
And, because it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, I know Microsoft's bought them out, quite recently. It was like 700 million, wasn't it, Xander?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite funny because I believe they're still keeping it as a multi-platform thing. They're not gonna try and make it Xbox exclusive. They know what they've got there. They know they've got this little crown jewel that they can just expand upon and keep making and build upon it to know that they will receive a further income from it. So they're investing a lot more in terms of the gaming industry. Now, another thing I want to ask you a little bit about is Sony. Now, Xander can adhere to this. Sony have kind of been one of these companies where they have their ups and downs, you know, from having the PlayStation 3, which wasn't as like big as the PlayStation 2 in sense of the market value and the market share that they had. And, you know, apart from even having like a service that kind of ran parallel to what the Xbox Live service was, and it was free, pretty much, you know, with the online play service. Now they've got this whole PlayStation Now thing happening, and you know, the Vita, which they kind of dropped the ball on. And there's rumors going around that the company itself is, because all the other divisions, like their television, their video divisions, and are not as profitable as their gaming division. What do you see in the future for them? Do you think that they're still going to keep progressing? Or do you think now with their Gaikai facility, as you said, they'll probably head on to just making everything digital and streamlining their next console, the PlayStation 5, is probably just going to be a box, you know, to the point that there's going to be no media whatsoever.
I hope they don't get to that. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we're pretty far from the PS5, I would think, a couple of years, 4 or 5 years away. So, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't have an answer. I don't know what Sony has in mind. I mean, I don't think they'd be stupid enough to do a digital only. They did that with the Vita or PSP Go, and that failed. But as we mentioned before in the podcast, I do think that's the future of gaming, unfortunately. I think people are going to try to shove that, you know? So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
For anybody out there that basically has, aspirations to kind of collect games, I know you said before that you need to have a budget. What do they need to look out for if they say going to start building a gaming collection? Is it, and what do you feel that's the one key thing that people should consider before even attempting something like this?
Well, I think first off, collect what you love. Don't go out and get games that you don't want to necessarily play. Same thing goes for consoles. And, I do play my console. Now, there are a few consoles I own, admittedly that I haven't played much because they're terrible consoles. Gamecom, for example, is one of them. But if you can get it for cheap, why not? But I mean, for the most part, my advice is, just definitely do your research. Have fun doing it. Don't get frustrated. Be careful of bite nows because, see if I always prefer doing just normal auction style because that really gives you the good idea as far as what the market value of that system is or the game might be.
Yeah.
So, you look at past sales too. If you can go to eBay, you can see what completed sales, what have been sold in the past will give you a good idea. There's a really cool app called NES Collector, Super Nintendo Collector. I just did a video on this recently, but they're like $4, but they basically tell you real time what the value of each game is. Complete, loose, whatnot, and it compares to eBay pricing and among other things on the web, and it's pretty cool. It's a nice way to keep track of your collection. And it shows you the box art and shows you how rare it is on scale to 1 to 12, 1 being super common, 12 being extremely rare. It's a very convenient, nice app to have.
And Xander, have you got another sort of final question to ask here for Mr. Gamester?
I guess if what kind of advice would you give maybe some people that are listening that are contemplating on starting their own YouTube channel? Like, what exactly advice would you want to give them?
Don't do it. No, I'm just playing. Just joking. No, of course do it. Don't do it. No, of course do it. But have fun. And don't let the trolls, don't let the hate get to you and get under your skin. I know it's easier said than done because, trust me, I've been there and done that where I read comments and they're hurtful. And, you want to take it defensive. You want to take it personal and respond to them. But don't feed the trolls. So my advice is do it because you have fun. Talk about topics that you're knowledgeable about, that you really enjoy and that you're passionate about. And if you do get any hate, you're at that point where I think people are jealous and ignorant. That's what I like to think anyway. and take it as a grain of salt. You don't want to take it personal. Of course, take constructive criticism. That's always, but that's totally different than being just comments that are just hateful and meant to bring you down. So I think once you start getting noticed, trolls will come out, and it happens to the best of us. So that was my advice.
I always tell people when they start getting trolls that trolls, even though they say really hateful things, they're not necessarily a bad thing because they're still watching your channel and they're still adding they're still adding a presence to your overall YouTube. So if you have like a bunch of trolls that are watching your channel, you're just getting hits and people are going to find you even better, even easier on YouTube because of, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
You're absolutely right, man. And, I've read comments from trolls, that are like, they bring up things I've talked about on All Gen Gamers, so I know they listen to the podcast, I know they watch my show, so to me, they're fans. Why would they waste their time to listen to all that and just to come up with some BS comment? I scratch my head, but it is what it is, but, I don't know, make a lot of friends too. There's so many great people in this community, and it's such a great hobby to get into, and just have fun doing it.
Jamie, what about yourself? Xander actually took my question. Random question. What is the most expensive game that you've ever bought for your collection?
I thought you were going to ask me for a ticket to Europe, to the UK. I thought you were going to ask me if I could fly out there to an expo.
That's true. If you want to do that and fly me out for that thing that Burhan is going to and not taking me to.
I'm sorry that you live so far away.
Most expensive game that I've ever bought. Okay, so I can think of one. I don't know if this is my most expensive, but this is one of my. I don't know. It's hard because when you have a lot of games, it's hard to keep track. But I bought a sealed Zelda Ocarina of Time unopened, and it's like perfect mint condition. And I think I paid like $400 for it.
My boyfriend
so nothing like
has
crazy.
Had a stroke because he loves Zelda.
Oh, right on. And it's a funny story how I found that.
Oh my god, really?
It's funny how I found that because I was up in Seattle during PAX a couple years back, and there's a really cool place called Another Castle. If you're ever in the Seattle area, I guess you should definitely go. And we were just like, I was there with Metal Jesus, a good friend of mine and fellow podcaster, and we're just shopping, and we're about to leave, and this guy comes up, this old guy in his probably 50s, 60s, shows up, speeds around, parks in his car, and I noticed he has this box of unopened Nintendo games, unused player strategy guides, all this stuff. It was amazing. And dude, are you trading that in or selling that? What's going on? He's like, his story is he used to work for Nintendo because Nintendo's headquartered up there, and he had all this stuff in his closet and he just wants to get rid of it. And it just happened to be one of those games was that Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I was like, holy shit, I gotta get that, So, it was pretty crazy. And it's I almost want to get it graded, but I almost don't because I'm kind of on the fence about grading. but I know if it was graded, it'd probably be like an 8 to 9. It's that good of shape. So.
Wow,
How
that's
comes
insane.
you're on the fence of grading itself? Well, I know the reason, but it's kind of a rhetorical question. But do you find that the whole grading system to be silly, in a sense? Or,
I do.
Yeah.
It's silly. I mean, it's because you're like basically essentially buying a game that other people think might. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because like with Star Wars collecting, same thing. You get figures graded, you know. But to me, that makes a little bit more sense than getting games graded. I don't know why. You know, it's not like I'm going to open the Zelda up and play it because I already have a copy. It'd be stupid for me to open a sealed copy. So, you know, I don't know why. What do you guys think about grading games?
Yeah, I have a huge thing about it because I think it's kind of, excuse my language for this, I find it kind of like a dick measuring contest in some people because they're like, look, I've got this game, it's so graded.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't play with it.
It drives up the value like 4 times, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all about supply. And so if people are willing to pay 4 times the price, then that's their prerogative, you know, I guess. But it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where you know that if you don't play with it, it's like, then why have you got it in the first place? There's like, yeah, but look, it's graded, it's smart, it's an A+ or something like that, and you just sit there and think, okay. I remember, I think it was Billy Chaser did one where he put one of his NES games in a poly bag,
Yeah.
like a little post-it note on it saying A+ graded, and just went, yeah, this is like super valuable. But I was like,
it's a good point.
Yeah, it's
I saw that post too.
It just don't make sense to me. It's one of those things like you either play it, you enjoy your game, great. The value should be what it's valuable to you. It's like when someone comes to me and says, hey, how much do you think this game's worth? I'm just like, dude, if it's valuable to you and you want it, buy it. You know,
That's right. That's absolutely right.
You know, we shouldn't be telling you how valuable a game is because if you don't know how valuable it is, why the hell are you buying it in the first place? Xander, what about you?
What do I think about grading video games?
Yeah.
I think it's a waste of time. I don't know. I mean, if it's not in the same essence as like comic books or baseball cards and stuff like that. Something, to me, it's a lot different. And I do think
that's what I was trying. Yeah, exactly.
You know, with you know, retro gaming and stuff like that being so big now, it's just another thing to make the hobby more expensive, and then maybe get people into the hobby that don't necessarily. I don't want to say understand. I don't want to belittle people that get into the hobby because I mean it's an awesome hobby, but people that kind of lose the point of it. You know, that, you know, you'll get people on Facebook pages and stuff like that, and they'll post a bunch of games that they picked up, but it's just, at that point, they're just picking up games just to have them, and it's just like, buy what you want to play, man. Like, they're video games. Have fun with it, you know, like, just don't buy a game because a person on YouTube said it was uncommon, you know, and I think it's a weird, like, acceptance that people try to get online, or maybe something like that, but I personally don't get it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
What about you, Jamie? What do you think?
I am like so out of my league here. I don't even know what that means. So I'm going to agree with everyone and say that, yeah, waste of time.
So Jamie, basically what people do is they pay money to send these games in for another person to say, okay, this is in, you know, out of 1 to 10 scale, this is a 7. And then they put it in a nice plastic case, they put a sticker on it, and they flip that and sell it for 3-4 times the price of what it would sell for normally.
What? That sounds like...
Exactly.
That sounds like a load of bull. Like, why would you do that?
I don't know. In a society...
That's what we're wondering. I think that sums it up right there. Why would you do that?
why would, like, that is legitimately my reaction. Is like, why would you do that? It would be like all of these Play Arts figures that me and my boyfriend have, like Final Fantasy and stuff. It'd be like sending in his Reno Final Fantasy Advent Children Play Arts figure to someone, be like, hey, what's this worth? They can take it out of the box, put a sticker on it, put it in a plastic baggie, and just mark on it with a Sharpie and be like, A+, gold star, and send it back.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And in terms of, but I think it's kind of the price that we're paying at the moment because we've got something that, I remember when I was a kid, being a game collector, being a comic book nerd and stuff was kind of looked down upon. Oh, look, you're a geek. Now it's become so much part of pop culture that's ingrained to the point where everybody's getting involved. And when that happens, then you usually get the people sitting there going, oh, I can do this and offer this crappy service that nobody really even needs, to basically, if you pay me X amount of money, and, these people come out of the woodwork. It's what happens. So, on kind of a final note there, John, what have you been up to? What's been going on? Tell us a little bit about what's been happening. It's your chance here to promote everything that you're doing.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we talked about a lot of it. Got a YouTube channel, Games81.com. Nostalgiaholic, which is a fun show. Star Wars Net 77. I'm launching that new Star Wars site next week. So for those Star Wars fans out there, it's swnet77.com. That should be up soon. I'm working on, I'm on the LGN Gamers podcast, of course. And, one of my fellow podcasters, Jason Hangy, and I are actually putting together a retro gaming expo in Phoenix next year. So that's a lot of work, keeping us busy doing that. It's going to be called the Game On Expo, and it's going to be not only gaming, but it's also going to be tabletop gaming too. So it's going to be all aspects of gaming. So anything from magic cards to video games, we'll have it, which is going to be cool. So, and then, working with Collector Vision, which is a kind of company that we're producing old games for new games for old systems, and keep them busy with that. So, plus I have a day job and a family, so plenty busy.
Yeah,
plenty busy. I'm like, I don't get any sleep early. So,
yeah, I understand that totally, man. I've been with the, watching my little ones grow up now. I've got like my little 4-year-old and 3-year-old boys. And having that with my daughters now who are 8 and 6. And it's been, when you get through that first stage, they're incredibly cute, but they will keep you awake. That's their goal.
Yeah.
their goal.
But you wouldn't want it any other way, would you? It's worth it at the end, isn't it?
they're big eyes. Yeah. You get stuff. It's all worth it. It's to me, having these little people in your life who make everything 100 times better. So it's a great thing. I take my hat off to you, sir.
Thank you. You too. But likewise, man. Likewise. And I'm excited to go trick-or-treating for the first time in a while with my boys.
Yeah.
They turned 1 like 2 weeks ago. So they're walking, so I'm going to, bring them to the door, and I'll probably end up eating all their candy. I might give them 1 or 2 pieces, but but it's been like forever since I've done trick-or-treating, forever.
Utilize the cuteness so people will give you more candy.
Yep.
I do.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Also for the walking.
Oh man.
For the walking thing, try and bolt everything that they can get a hold of up high. Cause I have my daughters. I went to IKEA and I just kept buying these like shelves that you could bolt to the wall, and I've just shoved every one of my consoles at the top so they can't touch them.
That's smart. Yeah, I'm kind of experienced in trying to child-proof the whole house, and it's funny because they always run to something they know they're not supposed to get into, and they always figure out where it is, The other day, like, Mark was getting into like a plant pot and started eating dirt. I'm like, really, dude? Like, but that's what they do, they don't know any better, So, it's fun. It
is hilarious, especially with the way that they do it. It's like what was the last one that my son Rohan did? He started picking stuff off the floor, like every time he had food, that would be dropped on the floor, he'd be eating it, and then the kids tried to feed him under the table like he was a dog, like he was a family
like a dog
or something.
That's so funny.
It's like, I don't want
He's a 3-year-old?
Yeah, he was just sitting there, just underneath the table, they would just drop their food underneath, and he would just like pick it up and start eating it. But now,
cute, but yeah.
Well, now he's at that point where he's got this little personality, so he's now, he'll do things and say things that would make you crack up with laughter, but you've got to be like, no, don't do that. I think one I was saying to like Xander and everybody when we did a show once, he basically like, took a poo in the bathtub, and he was extremely proud of it. And I was just like, dude, you shouldn't have done that. His sisters were freaking out, the whole house was freaking out. And he just came up to me, he's like, Dad, I want to tell you something. I was like, what's that? I did a poo in the bathtub and everyone was screaming. I was like, no, that's not to be proud of. You know.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny because at that age too, particularly, they pretty much, they say things before they think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Like the other day, I was just my wife was at work and it was like on the set weekend, and I was babysitting the boys, and I was bottle feeding one, and the other one was just walking around, you know, in his little gym area, and I noticed like Mark was like the one that was not feeding. He was like, there was like chocolate everywhere on the carpet and whatever, you know. I'm like, I don't remember getting him chocolate. What the hell? And it's on his hands, and it's almost like it's on his lips, and I'm like, oh shit, that's not chocolate. Like he had pooped out of his diaper, and like it got all everywhere, and he was like messing around with it, you know, and just playing with it, and I'm like, oh, so I had to call like poison control to see like what, if I need to do anything, because I think some got into his mouth. I don't know, you know.
Oh,
and they're like, just I'm like, just give him water and just keep an eye on him if he doesn't like start vomiting, and nothing ever happened, thank God. But it was like one of those moments as a father, you're like, and I'm juggling both of them because of course he would need to be changed, and I got the other one to worry about, you know. It was like he was getting in a mess too, and I'm like, yeah, they don't know at that age, you know, but it's so funny. I was like looking back on it, it's correct.
Yeah, trust me,
Yeah.
I've been there with my youngest one, Erhan, at the moment. He did that. Luckily enough, he learnt a lesson because he didn't like it very much.
Well, that's. I was about to say that's like my nephew. My nephew's 1. I got 2 nephews. I got one that's 2 and one that's 1. And my window seal in the living room had chunks of wood missing. And I'm like, what the hell happened to the window seal? And my sister was telling me that her 1-year-old had been eating the window seal, like eating pieces of it, like chomping pieces of the wood off, like a little beaver. Yeah. It's weird how kids do that, man.
Yeah, it's like everything's in the mouth. Everything in the mouth. You know, like it's whatever you put in your hands, they'll put in the mouth, which is like, you know, when they're age, it's just, I don't know, it's either teething or what, but it's funny, man. I mean, I should have taken a picture, and then what I should have done is during his graduation, you know, high school graduation, I should have put a picture of Mark with shit on his lips, you know, and yeah, there you are. That was you.
I think all of us can agree that we're so glad that when we were kids there wasn't a YouTube type of thing, because oh my god, I would have had so many videos on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
I feel bad for those kids today.
Yeah, like I would have had so many because I was the kind of kid, I was in like musical theater from the time I was 6, and I was singing and dancing from the time I was 4. And so I would put on shows in the house and sing songs that I made up that mean nothing. I mean, we have a video of me running around a stool in a skirt, and I was singing, and I have no idea what I was singing, but my mom was like, "You're so cute," and like we were walking back, watching the videos, like, for no reason, and I'm like, oh my god, Mom, no. Oh god, Mom, no. Oh god, Mom, no. And I'm just sitting there. And then she would tell me stories about, going back to like kids eating things. Apparently I used to eat cigarettes.
Oh god.
Oh, yeah.
I would eat cigarettes, and amazingly enough,
just saying, you know.
Amazingly enough, it's a vitamin deficiency. If kids eat stuff like that, usually they're drawn to it because they have some sort of vitamin deficiency. And their body is telling them that to eat this, because we had a neighbor's kid when he was a lot younger. He used to eat ashes, like cigarette ashes, and they said it's a vitamin deficiency.
That's interesting, though, right? That means take some vitamins.
Yeah, pretty much.
Better ways
Take your vitamins.
Yeah.
Have a pack of smokes. There you go.
Yeah,
take your vitamins and say prayers, brother.
Right on.
So going on that note, Xander, what are you currently doing at the moment?
Oh gosh, what am I not doing at the moment? Well, of course, you know, I'm doing, I get gameplay. I also host my own video game podcast, XS Gaming Podcast, and that's, every other week. We usually try to do them on Tuesdays. You can listen to it on, XS Gaming Podcast on Podomatic, or subscribe to us on iTunes. I also have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Xander Skullion. And currently I've been co-hosting on another podcast called Entertainment Talk Nation. And that podcast, we cover more than just games. We cover TV shows, movies, and comics, just all forms of media with Rob and his YouTube channel. So we've been doing that and just doing a little bit of video game music on the side for some indie RPGs. And of course, everything is on the Retro Unlimited Network and the nerdgenius.com.
Thank you very much for the cheap plug. Jamie, what are you doing at the moment?
Well, as far as what I'm doing, I just finished up watching LA Noire. That was a pretty fun game. The ending was complete and utter just crap, but that was a fun game. I'm finally filming again. I filmed enough videos so I can put one out a week for the next 3 weeks or so. I finally figured out how to render everything and it's all set up. I'm fixing to put up a video here in the next few minutes, talking about the new information we've recently gotten for Resident Evil Revelations 2 over the past few weeks. You can find that on my YouTube channel, Shimegee, Shimegee. I can't wait to update my content there. It's been a few weeks. I'm gonna try and post more to the Retro Unlim website. I'm still a little nervous about uploading because, you know, I'm the only female and I'm also the youngest, so I'm still a bit nervous. You can find me at Hazardous Cosplay, HAZRD-US Cosplay on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me at GVirusJunkie on Twitter and Tumblr. Yes, Twitter and Tumblr. And you can also find me now on DeviantArt by the same name as our Facebook name for all of our cosplay updates and things like that.
Awesome. And last but not least, John, what are you currently playing at the moment?
I've been playing a lot of Destiny. Really enjoying that quite a bit. As far as retro games go, I've been playing a lot of classic Sonic games, to be honest with you. Kind of going back to, Sonic 2, Sonic 3. It's been a long time since I've actually beaten those games. So, I've been playing those. Just a little everything. Definitely Destiny. And I just completed, The Walking Dead, season 2. Which is crazy, and I like at the end how it tells you compares your picks compared to other people's picks, decisions, and my last decision was totally off from what the majority picked, which I think is kind of interesting.
Oh dear.
And and then also there's this game called what's it called? I can't even think about it. It's on Steam. It's basically where you build your own game, you have your own company, and it's kind of what is it called? I should know this. Game Dev Tycoon, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
And basically what you do, have you played it?
Yeah. It's
a lot of fun. It's interesting because you start in your own, garage and you have to, you come up with these games, these concepts, and you have to release them. And it goes through, starts off on the classic, Commodore 64 or whatever, and then you have to evolve, and eventually you make money, you can go into an office building and hire employees, and it's a really interesting dynamic. It's a lot of fun. I've been enjoying that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a great game, guys. If you ever haven't played it, play it. It's one of those must-haves for your phones. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find us on nerdgenius.com, retrounlim.com. This is 101, of course. So basically, you've already listened to episode 100 with Robman and Johnny Millennium on there for us as well. That was a great episode. Also, you can basically check out John on his various outlets as well. Make sure you keep supporting. Make sure that if you do see him, just say hi. Very approachable, very nice guy. And also, you can check us out, retrounlim.com, Stitcher, iTunes, everywhere where there's podcasts, blogtalkradio.com as well. And that's pretty much from us. For Jamie Stiles, for Xander Skullion, for John Gamester, aka Gamester81, this is Michael Burhan saying that we've got gameplay. Have you?